Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Hinata found the courage to kiss Naruto at the Academy swing? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto knew something was wrong with him the moment he woke up. His head was pounding. His throat was scratchy. His body ached even worse than that first morning after joining Guy-sensei's insane workout. His skin felt like it was on fire. Worst of all was the vertigo and nausea. The moment he sat up, he felt the world spinning, and his stomach violently objected to being upright. He barely made it to the toilet in time, almost falling twice on the way. By the time he was done retching, he wasn't on fire anymore, he was absolutely freezing. I haven't been this sick since, I can't remember. Hurts to think. Naruto shivered and stumbled over to his medicine cabinet, looking for something, anything, that he could take to relieve his discomforts. It was empty. If he'd had the energy, Naruto would have cursed. Idiot. Forgot to restock my supplies after the last time I was sick. I'll need to pick up more medicine, later. It took all the energy he had left to, literally, crawl back to his bed. By the time he got there, he simply collapsed on top. He didn't bother pulling the covers over himself. That would have taken too much effort. He tilted his head to glance at the clock beside his bed, 4:50 a.m. Naruto moaned. The last thing he wanted to do right now was train. He just wanted to sleep. Dying sounded pretty good, too, and less painful than what he was currently feeling. No, I need to get up, need to meet Hinata-chan and Lee for training soon. Guy-sensei was away on a mission, but 3 of them would faithfully practice what they knew without him until he came back. I just need a little rest, first. Despite his intentions, Naruto passed out exactly 2 seconds later. Hinata was worried. Naruto had not shown up for training this morning. Training to become stronger was his passion. He would never skip out on a training session without a very good reason. He never missed it. After waiting for 15 minutes, she and Lee had started training on their own, but her heart and mind had been elsewhere. She lost count of her repetitions while working out. She nearly tripped half a dozen times while running laps because she kept looking behind her, hoping for Naruto to appear. And she was so distracted that she couldn't keep her focus on sparring with Lee. He landed 3 fatal strikes within the first 5 minutes. Hinata cringed at her appalling performance. She hadn't lost that badly to Lee in months. Lee seemed to understand, however, and suggested that they stop early. Hinata nodded gratefully and dashed off to the academy. Surely, Naruto wouldn't miss class too. But he did. By lunchtime, Hinata was a mess. She had been unable to concentrate, continually glancing up at the clock and willing its hands to move faster. Class had never seemed to crawl by so slowly. She hung back as the rest of her classmates headed merrily off to lunch. Iruka-sensei, do you know where Naruto-kun is? He wasn't in class, and he didn't show up for training this morning, either. Don't worry, Hinata. Iruka gave her a reassuring smile. He was glad that someone other than himself worried about the blonde, too. He's probably just a little sick and decided to stay home and recover. Naruto's always been quick to recuperate. I'm sure he'll be back in class by Monday. Iruka's attempt to reassure Hinata was completely wasted. But Iruka-sensei, Naruto-kun lives alone, Hinata said anxiously. If Naruto-kun is sick, who will take care of him? Why don't we visit him after class? Iruka suggested. I'm sure it's nothing serious. But we can check up on him and bring him his class assignments so he doesn't fall behind. Hinata smiled gratefully at her teacher. Even after 3 years of friendship, Hinata had never invited Naruto into her home. She did not want to flaunt her family's wealth in his face. And she was afraid. What would her father do if he found out about her friendship with Naruto? Instinctively, she knew he would not be pleased. He would most likely forbid her from ever seeing Naruto again. Naruto was nothing like the Hyuga. He had no clan, no money, no political influence, and most of the village seemed to hate him on sight. He was not someone the Hyuga heiress should be seen with. That she had successfully kept her father in the dark about her friendship with Naruto for years. It should have been an impossible feat. Except for the fact that her father took absolutely no interest in her life, unless it was to criticize her for failing to live up to his standards. He never asked, and Hinata was not about to volunteer. Likewise, Naruto had never invited Hinata into his home, either. His shabby apartment was tiny, barely big enough for one person, let alone visitors. And he was afraid. He knew that she knew he was an orphan with little money. But knowing and seeing were two different things. His small apartment was old and rundown, though he tried unsuccessfully to keep it clean and neat. If she saw how he lived, would she pity him? Would her feelings for him change? He knew Hinata, and deep down, he knew that she would never pity him, would never stop being his friend over something so material. But years of neglect and verbal abuse left him overprotective of his friendships, and he was unwilling to take the risk, no matter how negligible. Hence, by unspoken mutual agreement, they always spent their time together in public places, at the academy, at the training grounds, at Ichiraku's, at their park bench, or even sometimes, at Iruka's apartment. Hinata looked down at the slip of paper in her hand. Was this the correct address? She wished Iruka-sensei were with her, but he had been called away for an emergency staff meeting that would last for several hours. Iruka had apologized and quickly penned Naruto's address for her before he had to leave. The building was old and dilapidated, the paint was peeling and faded, though sections of newer paint covered the walls at uneven intervals. Hinata suspected that someone had attempted to conceal graffiti with fresh paint. She climbed a set of rickety steps to the second landing and found the correct door with no trouble. As she raised her hand to knock, she hesitated. Suddenly, she was very nervous. She was standing right outside Naruto's home. What if he told her to leave? She was there uninvited, intruding on his privacy. Would he be angry? But, what if Naruto was truly sick? She would never forgive herself if she didn't help him. And she needed to know that he was okay. She was so worried about him. She wouldn't run away. Naruto had woken several times during the day, but opted to stay in bed. He needed to get food and medicine, he needed to eat to replenish his energy. But he lacked the will to follow through. Just thinking about food, even ramen, was enough to make him nauseous. Earlier, he tried drinking a little water. Although the cool liquid soothed his throat, it made his stomach do somersaults. And he was so tired. He briefly wondered how long it would take for Iruka-sensei to come check on him. Iruka-sensei was the only person he could think of who knew where he lived and who would notice his absence and want to check up on him. Neither Hinata nor Lee knew where he lived. Guy-sensei was still away on a mission. And while he knew the Sandaime cared, he was the Hokage and much too busy to see Naruto on a daily basis. Thinking about the very short list of people who cared about him only depressed him further. He slept fitfully. The illness prevented him from resting comfortably, until he was roused by a knock on the door. Please, let that be Iruka-sensei. I could really use his help right about now. Naruto stumbled to the door. It wasn't Iruka-sensei, but it was another welcome face. Hinata-chan, what are you doing here? Naruto blinked in confusion. Naruto-kun. Hinata was alarmed by Naruto's appearance. He looked terrible. His face was pale. His eyes were too bright and his voice sounded rough as sandpaper, even his normally spiky hair hung dull and limp. He was using the door for support. Hinata kicked off her shoes and hurried to help him back into bed. I was worried about you, Naruto-kun. You didn't show up for training or class. Sorry about that, Hinata-chan. Don't worry about it. Hinata put her hand on his forehead and gasped. He was burning up. You have a high fever. Did you take anything for it? No, I ran out of medicine and forgot to get more. I'll go get some for you then, Naruto-kun. I'm sorry for being such a bother. You're not a bother at all. Just rest, okay? I'll take care of you. Thank you, Naruto murmured. Her words touched him deeply. No one had ever said that to him before. Not even Iruka or the Sandaime. Most people took great delight in telling him the opposite or worse, and he had learned to take care of himself at an early age because no one else wanted to do it. As always, her presence alone was enough to dispel his earlier depression. He hadn't taken any medicine, but he was already feeling much, much better. Content and more comfortable than he'd been all day, Naruto fell fast asleep. As soon as he was sleeping, Hinata glanced over his apartment. It was tiny. The kitchen, dining, and sleeping areas were essentially one room. A small kitchenette took up one corner of the apartment. Naruto's bed took another. There was a small dining table and one chair in the center between the kitchen and the bed. Besides the front door to the apartment, Hinata saw 3 other doors, 2 open to the toilet and the bath. The last door led to a rectangular, windowless room only just big enough not to be called a closet. It was filled with scrolls, books, kunai and shuriken, all strewn haphazardly about. Some of those kunai and shuriken were even sticking out of the walls having missed their targets. Naruto must use this room for training, Hinata mused. She checked his apartment for food. Other than some cereal, a half-empty carton of expired milk in the refrigerator, and a large box full of instant ramen cups by the front door, Hinata could find nothing else. Although she was exasperated by Naruto's lack of anything resembling real food, she had to grin at the giant box of instant ramen cups. She would pick up some groceries along with his medicine. Hinata found Naruto's keys on the table and pocketed them, so that she wouldn't disturb him when she returned. Then she hurried out to do some quick shopping. She had seen a small grocery store nearby on the way to his apartment. Naruto was dreaming. He knew he was dreaming, but didn't seem to have enough energy to wake up or to control the direction of his dream. Naruto was 4 again and back in the orphanage. When he had been 4, he had gotten very, very sick. But the matron at the orphanage, a stern lady with prematurely graying hair, had refused to believe him. Naruto had never liked any of his caretakers at the orphanage. They never beat him because they feared the Sandaime's wrath, but there were 100 other little things they could and would do to make his life miserable. Matron had insisted he was faking illness to attract extra attention. As punishment, she had locked him in his room. 4-year-old Naruto climbed into bed. He had the coldest, draftiest room at the orphanage, and the thin blanket he was provided with did nothing to keep the chill away. He shivered. Naruto knew how this story ended. The Sandaime would pay him a surprise visit 2 days later. He would find Naruto still terribly ill and much too thin for his age. Naruto had been unable to keep any food down during his illness. The Sandaime would send for his own doctor to heal Naruto. But that was still days away. To Naruto's surprise, the dream changed. It was not as he remembered. An angel with dark hair and a kind voice came to him. He couldn't make out her face. It remained fuzzy and indistinct no matter how hard he focused. But he knew instinctively that she was beautiful. All angels were beautiful. "What are you doing here?" he asked her. "I'm here to take care of you, Naruto-kun." Naruto thought her voice was beautiful, too. "Why, you're my friend." Really, Naruto wanted to be happy. An angel wanted to be his friend. But, won't you get in trouble?" he asked uncertainly. "Why would I get in trouble? I'm the demon child," he told her, in case she didn't know. "I don't think I'm allowed to have my very own angel." The angel didn't answer his question. Instead, "Here, take this, Naruto-kun. It will make you feel better." Naruto obediently took his medicine. He trusted the angel, and he wanted to feel better. He was tired of being sick. A few moments later, he was sleepier than ever. He didn't want to sleep. He wanted to talk to the angel. "Go to sleep, Naruto-kun. I'll stay with you." The beautiful voice soothed him. Dream. When Hinata returned to the apartment, she found Naruto shivering in bed. He had kicked the covers off. She prepared a dose of the multi-symptom medicine for him. It would reduce his fever, alleviate his sore throat, and hopefully hasten his recovery. Naruto-kun, you need to wake up. I have some medicine for you. Hinata shook his shoulder. Naruto opened his eyes, but he didn't seem to be fully aware. He seemed confused to see her and asked why she was there. He was obviously still dreaming or delirious. Demon child, his very own angel, was Naruto talking about her? Hinata blushed. If he had called her that while he was lucid, Hinata would most certainly have fainted. At least, he woke long enough to take his medicine without complaint. Hinata tucked the covers around him. Go to sleep, Naruto-kun. I'll stay with you. Hinata pulled the chair from the dining table over to his bed. She sat with him until he was asleep again. Then she got to work. Hinata started boiling water for a simple vegetable broth. Next she rinsed the rice with water from the tap and then added some water and the rice to the rice cooker. She looked back at Naruto occasionally as she cooked. He didn't even stir. It didn't take her long to finish preparing a simple meal that was bland enough not to upset his sensitive stomach and far more nutritious than instant ramen. Hinata hoped Naruto enjoyed it. Then she tidied his apartment. She picked up his clothes that were on the floor and placed them in a basket by the front door, so that he could easily take them to the laundromat later. She collected all the empty ramen cups strewn about his apartment and tossed them out. She also threw out the expired milk, replacing it with a fresh carton, then took out the trash. As she swept the floor, Hinata hummed a happy melody. She felt like a wife. She blushed furiously at the stray thought and glanced over at Naruto. He was still sleeping. She sighed in relief. While she was unhappy that Naruto was sick, she was happy to do these little things for him. Naruto was always so strong. He always made time to help her, to encourage her, and to listen to her problems. He did so much for her. Without him, she would have remained that weak, stuttering, little girl that no one respected. She was stronger now. Even her esteemed clan with its impossible expectations was starting to notice. And it was all thanks to Naruto. Hinata felt as if she would never be able to do enough for him. Sometimes, she helped him with class work that he didn't understand. Sometimes, she helped him with his chakra control. Sometimes, she even helped him perfect a new stance or move for Goken that he learned from Gai-sensei. But Hinata dismissed those things as inconsequential. Naruto was strong and smart. He would have done all those things, even without her help. I need Naruto-kun so much more than he will ever need me. I don't want him to be sick, but this time, Naruto-kun needs me. It's my turn to be there for him. It feels nice to be needed. Naruto's apartment was so tiny, that Hinata soon finished cleaning. All the cooking and cleaning had taken less than an hour. With nothing else to do, Hinata sat beside his bed and watched him sleep. While he was sleeping, she could stare at him as long as she liked. To Hinata, Naruto was very good looking, and the whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks were so cute. She would never tire of looking at him. In sleep, Naruto looked vulnerable. The boundless energy and determination he possessed were not evident. Instead, he looked serene and at peace. She reached out and placed a hand on his forehead. The medicine was taking effect. Already, his skin felt cooler to the touch and he was less pale. Color was returning to his face. Her hand lingered, and Hinata was overcome by temptation. She ran her fingers through his spiky blonde locks. They were so soft. Naruto stirred a little but did not wake. She reluctantly pulled her fingers back. She scolded herself. Bad Hinata. Don't molest Naruto in his sleep. It was getting late. As much as she wanted to stay with Naruto until he was fully recovered, she needed to go. If she stayed out any later, her father would notice, and question her absence. You're asleep, so you can't hear me. But I still want you to know, I'll always be here for you, Naruto-kun. I'll take care of you, whenever you need me. I promise, Hinata said solemnly. Then she smiled softly, and I don't go back on my word. You taught me that, Naruto-kun. Thank you. There was more she wanted to say. But even with Naruto asleep, she couldn't bring herself to confess aloud. She leaned forward and placed a tender kiss on his cheek. "I love you, Naruto-kun." She let herself linger and savored the sensation of just being near Naruto. "Get well soon." "Okay, I'll be back tomorrow," she told him. Then she left, making sure that the door locked behind her on her way out. The next time Naruto woke up, he felt 100 times better. He was still a little tired, but his head didn't hurt, his throat wasn't scratchy, he wasn't too hot or too cold, and he was absolutely ravenous. Naruto almost whined piteously as his stomach painfully demanded sustenance immediately, not later, not in the 3 minutes it would take to make instant ramen, but right now. "Shut up, stupid stomach. I don't have anything for us to eat right now." "Wait, is that—" Yes, there was food on the table. Naruto practically tripped over his own feet in his haste to get at the food. It was still warm. Plain broth, steamed fish lightly seasoned with spices, and perfectly fluffy white rice had never tasted so good. Only after he had inhaled the entire delicious meal did he wonder where it came from. With his stomach satisfied, Naruto finally noticed the current state of his apartment. It was clean. He did a double take and pinched himself. Ouch. So, if he wasn't dreaming, then what happened? He'd been so sick and out of it that he couldn't remember much. The only thing he did remember was dreaming about a beautiful angel, who came to take care of him. Naruto frowned. That didn't explain the food or the clean apartment, though. He looked around for more clues and found a note with very familiar handwriting stuck on the refrigerator. "Naruto-kun, I'm sorry I came over uninvited. I was worried about you, so Iruka-sensei told me where you lived. I hope you enjoyed the meal I prepared. If you're still hungry, there are a few apples in the refrigerator. I'll stop by tomorrow to see how you're doing. Please get better soon. Hinata." Naruto smiled as he read the note. "Hinata-chan, thank you." He still couldn't remember much, but now he could vaguely recall opening the door and finding Hinata-chan instead of Iruka-sensei. Suddenly, he could remember her words with crystal clarity, "I'll take care of you." Happiness filled his heart. He had the best friend in the world. Hinata said a few other things, too. Naruto thought. A few more details were coming back to him. Something about promising to always be there for me. Or was that just a part of my dream? How strange, I could have sworn I felt Hinata kiss me. No, that had to have been a dream. Naruto shook his head, bemused. His mind sure came up with the weirdest ideas in the space between dream and reality. Hyuga Hiyashi frowned at the reports before him. How had all of this escaped his notice? As the Hyuga clan head, he naturally took great pride in his eyes. The Hyuga eyes were legendary for their ability to see things at great distances and with great clarity, even more so for their ability to see through, not just objects, but people, as well. Their fighting style revolved around that fact. Of less renown was their ability to see and analyze a person's potential. The Byakugan was nothing like the Sharingan, of course. But a highly trained Byakugan master could read the smallest nuances in body language and could predict with great accuracy his opponent's next move. Off the battlefield, the Byakugan had other uses, especially in diplomacy and negotiation. A Byakugan master could almost always spot a lie or an ulterior motive. It could be used to analyze people. Hiyashi had never been wrong about anyone before now. But according to his own recent observations and the reports sitting on his desk, he could only come to one conclusion. He had been wrong about his eldest child. 5 years ago, he had analyzed Hinata's abilities and found them lacking. Even without the Byakugan, her shortcomings were obvious. Physically, she was smaller, weaker, and had less talent than any other Hyuga child her age. Her performance in Juken was abysmal. She did not stand tall with pride, instead she was overly timid, almost jumping at her own shadow. Whoever heard of a meek Hyuga with a stutter? Hinata was not fit to be a Hyuga of the main house, let alone the next clan head. So he sent her to the academy. It would have been a waste of time to continue training her personally. He had been proven right. In her first year at the academy, among the commoners attempting to be ninja, Hinata, even with the benefit of prior training, had not distinguished herself in any way. Even though he had predicted that outcome, he had still been angry, and informed his daughter that unless she ranked at the top of her class, he would not waste any more of his time looking at her academy records. In retrospect, that had been a mistake. If he had paid more attention to her progress at the academy, perhaps he would have noticed the change sooner. Hinata had not shown him any further reports, and he had busied himself with more important affairs, such as running the clan and overseeing Hanabi's training once she turned 3. Unlike her sister, Hanabi showed great promise for one her age. Over the years, he'd received minor reports of Hinata's progress from the Hyuga instructors that had been assigned to her training. None of it was noteworthy. While her academic studies were beyond reproach, her skill at Juken was still below average. For any other clan, it might have been enough, but not for the Hyuga, who produced some of the best close-ranged fighters in Konoha. Each of her Juken instructors had remarked at one time or another that Hinata's work ethic was impressive. She worked hard and never stopped trying until she showed improvement. But hard work was nothing compared to a person's innate strength. Hard work could only take a person so far. For Hinata, who was far, far behind her peers, it could not possibly take her far enough. So he disregarded the few positive comments her instructors had to say about Hinata's progress. Then several months ago, he had received a late-night visit to his office from Hyuga Isamu. Flashback. Hyuga Hiyashi rarely retired early. In a clan the size of the Hyuga, there was much to be done. It was time to review the fiscal reports for household supplies and food expenditures. Then he needed to review the revised patrol schedule for the branch members assigned to protect the Hyuga grounds. A cup of cold, green tea, half full, sat by his elbow. Only the rustle of papers broke the silence in his office as he worked. A knock roused him from his concentration. Enter. Hiyashi-sama, Hyuga Isamu, one of Hinata's Jiyuken instructors, bowed low. I apologize for disturbing you so late. Isamu, Hiyashi acknowledged his apology with a nod. I assume you have news that cannot wait until you submit a written report. Yes, Hiyashi-sama, I thought you might be interested to hear an account of Hinata-sama's spar today with Katsu, of the branch house. Now, why would you think that? Hiyashi narrowed his eyes in irritation. No doubt my daughter lost yet again. I tire of hearing her failures. No, Hiyashi-sama. Hinata-sama won her match against Katsu. Besides a minuscule twitch of an eyebrow, Hiyashi remained impassive. But for someone of Hiyashi's iron control, it was equivalent to open-mouthed gaping on anyone else. Explain, Hiyashi ordered. Flashback. Isamu had described the spar in detail. Hyuga Katsu, while not a prodigy, had modest skill in Juken. Had it been a fluke? As the months passed, it became obvious that it was no stroke of luck. Hinata emerged victorious several more times against various other Hyuga children in her age group, not against Neji, of course. Neji remained undefeated among his peers. Her rate of success was steadily increasing. In the last month alone, she had won 3 out of 5 spars. She was no longer the weakest Hyuga. Within weeks, the entire clan, including the elders on the clan council, had noticed the change. Although Hinata had shown astonishing, and absolutely amazing, improvement in Juken, it was not enough to cement her position as the heiress. Behind closed doors, Hiyashi knew that the elders were hotly debating the next clan leader. Should they choose Hinata or Hanabi? Hinata was the elder daughter and by all rights the position should have been hers without question. Now that she was proving herself to be at least proficient in Juken, the more traditional elders of the council were content to have her remain the heiress. However, others were still skeptical of her ability. It would take time for them to change their perception of Hinata. While younger, Hanabi was very talented, and would also make a fitting heiress. The council was too evenly divided. Thus, the elders decided to settle the issue with a trial by combat. Flashback. It was Saturday. It was time for training in Juken. Hinata sighed in resignation. She much preferred to learn Juken from Gai-sensei. Hinata arrived at the clan dojo, expecting only Isamu and perhaps another Hyuga as her sparring partner. Instead, she found all 12 elders of the clan council, her father, and Hanabi waiting for her. She ruthlessly squashed her rising anxiety. What were they doing here? Father. Honorable elders, Hinata bowed respectfully. Hanabi-chan, we have heard of your new aptitude in Juken, and wish to see this for ourselves. You will fight Hanabi today, announced Hyuga Hideki, one of the elders. What was going on? Why did they want her to spar with Hanabi? It was no use trying to read the impassive faces of the elders or her father, they were too skilled and would not give anything away. On the other hand, Hanabi was only 6, Hinata glanced at her sister. While Hanabi tried to maintain a stoic expression, she was not entirely successful. Hanabi-chan is afraid, Hinata realized suddenly. Why would she be afraid of a simple spar between sisters? Unless, this is not a simple demonstration of my skill. You wish use this fight to determine which of us will become the successor, and which of us you will place in the branch house. You are correct, Hideki nodded once. If he was surprised at how quickly she caught on, he did not show it. Hinata almost panicked. What should she do? She was certain that she could defeat Hanabi if she went all out. Hanabi was undeniably talented, but Hinata had 5 extra years of physical growth and Juken training behind her. Unless she deliberately threw the fight, there was no way Hanabi could win. And if she cannot win, Hanabi-chan will be sent to the branch house, with the caged bird seal. The thought horrified Hinata. She had promised her sister that she would do everything in her power to protect her from that fate, although she had expected a few more years to work out a plan. What was she going to do now? She had promised. Naruto. Naruto would never go back on a promise, no matter what. Just the thought of him gave her courage and filled her with resolve. He would never break a promise, and neither would she. Your logic is flawed. Hinata raised her chin. Just a fraction of an inch, it was barely noticeable, unless you were a Hyuga. It was equivalent to screaming her defiance in their faces, and the elders knew it. Oh, please explain. Hideki's voice remained smooth and courteous, but his sudden, intense stare said volumes. If you wish to see the true extent of my abilities, then you have chosen the worst possible opponent for me to face. Hanabi-chan is my precious Imouto. I will not hurt her. I will never hurt her. If you force us to spar, I will hold back. How will you judge my true abilities then? Hinata could feel the weight of 13 intense glares fall on her. Her hands trembled. She might not have been the most perceptive Hyuga, but even she could not mistake their silent message. You do not know your place, and you will stand down. Despite her shaking hands and pounding heart, Hinata returned their fierce glares with one of her own. She raised her chin, just another fraction of an inch. No, the air was thick with tension. Hinata would not back down. And the elders were not used to their desires being thwarted, especially not by the weakest Hyuga. They were at an impasse. Flashback. The trial by combat between the sisters had not happened. In the end, Hiyashi had stepped in, and reminded the elders that they were still there to judge Hinata's prowess in Juken. A different opponent had been selected for Hinata, and she had acquitted herself admirably. The elders had been outraged, and grudgingly impressed. Rumors continued to spread through the clan. Not only was Hinata no longer the weakest, she was also gutsy, and had the sheer audacity to stand up to the council. True, it had been a small matter, but the old Hinata would have acquiesced immediately. The timid little mouse among the Hyuga had transformed into a kitten, that had claws and teeth and wasn't afraid to use them. Hiyashi was both pleased, for Hinata was finally showing traits worthy of a Hyuga, and perturbed. He was overflowing with questions. When did Hinata start to change? How had he not seen it before? Where did this hidden strength come from? Was the training provided by the Ninja Academy actually superior to the Hyuga training methods in some way? Preposterous. And if she had been hiding her strength, what else had she been hiding? How had he been so wrong, so blind, about his own daughter? Hiyashi could only come to a second disconcerting conclusion: he did not know his daughter. Who was Hinata? Hiyashi was a busy man. He spent time with Hanabi every day, as he oversaw her training in Juken personally. But he only saw Hinata for a short while during dinner every night. Dinners were silent affairs. Hiyashi never saw the need to make small talk with his children. During the day, he was occupied with clan business and Hanabi's training. He had never made an effort to make time for his eldest child. He tried to think back on the last time he'd seen Hinata outside of their nightly meal, and could not remember. After Isamu's shocking news, Hiyashi started to observe his daughter more carefully. Hinata showed no signs of any outward changes. She still did not walk tall with pride. She still spoke softly, though her stutter had, thankfully, disappeared. When did that happen? She still jumped whenever he raised his voice. She still gave every appearance of frailty, though he knew now that she was more than she appeared. Each observation only reinforced the incorrect impression that Hinata was just as weak today as the day he sent her to the academy. He waited to see if she would mention her progress in Juken or her victory against Hyuga Katsu. She did not. Were it not for Hyuga Isamu, Hiyashi would have remained ignorant of her improvement. It was almost as if she didn't want him to know. Why try to conceal such news when it would only improve her position within the clan? This was not something that could be concealed, not for long in any case. Why delay? What was she trying to hide? There were too many questions and not enough answers. Thus, he finally requested detailed copies of Hinata's academy records for the last 5 years. There had been some delay. Apparently her files had been misplaced, and he had only received them last week. Hiyashi made a mental note to file a complaint against her instructor, Yumino Iruka, was it, with the superintendent of the academy for his incompetence. Hinata was not the number 1 student in her class. That position belonged to Uchiha Sasuke. But for the last 2 years, she managed to rank among the top 5, and she was the best kunoichi in her class. While not ideally, she would have wrested the number 1 spot from Uchiha Sasuke. It was acceptable, and much better than her mediocre performance during her first year. According to the records, Hinata's improvement had begun sometime in the middle of her second year. What happened that year? He could glean nothing else from them. In a fit of aggravation, he commanded Hyuga Sho, the best information gatherer in the clan and a colleague of Morino Ibiki, to observe Hinata's activities discreetly and report every detail back to him. Hinata left the Hyuga compound every morning before the sun came up. She trained with Maida Gai, building up her stamina and working on both standard academy taijutsu and Juyuken, before heading to the academy. How long had she been working with Gai? Hiyashi frowned in distaste at the thought of the green-clad Junin. Was he the one behind her transformation? It seemed likely. After the academy, she would spend time with one of her classmates until she returned home for dinner. Usually, all they did was extra training together, although occasionally, they visited the Konoha Public Park or Ichiraku Ramen instead. From their familiarity with each other and bits of overheard conversation, Hyuga Sho concluded that the 2 children were very good friends, and had likely been good friends for years. Reviewing the report, Hiyashi had to concur. After dinner and before bed, Hinata and Hanabi would spend time together bonding and just talking about inconsequential things. Hiyashi was stunned by that last piece of news. He had not known that his daughters were close. They had never been demonstrative in front of him, and he had assumed incorrectly, yet again, that the 5-year age gap and Hinata's almost but not quite outcast position in the clan kept them from being close. He did not know Hinata. Now he wondered if he even knew Hanabi. All in all, Hinata comported herself almost without reproach. She sought additional training from Maeda Gai, a respected taijutsu specialist. She produced acceptable scores at the academy. And while surprising, Hiyashi could find no fault with cultivating a close relationship with her sister. If her friend had been anyone else, Hiyashi would have approved of Hinata's conduct. He tapped a finger on the report before him. It landed on a name. Now, he understood exactly what, or rather, who, his eldest daughter was trying to hide. Uzumaki Naruto, the Jinchuriki, the demon container, of the Kyuubi no Yuko. His daughter was friend to Uzumaki Naruto. Unlike the majority of the village, Hiyashi did not hate the Kyuubi container. He had known the Yondaime personally, and had absolute faith in the abilities of the fourth Hokage. Before his death, the Yondaime had assured him that his seal would hold the Kyuubi, and that it would never break free or take control of the host. Hiyashi believed him, but the Hyuga had a reputation to maintain, and Uzumaki Naruto was the village pariah. Hinata must have known this. It was obvious to anyone with eyes, let alone the Byakugan, though she would not have known the reasons behind it. She must also have known how he would react. It was time for him to make some time for his eldest daughter. They were overdue for a father-daughter chat. It simply would not do for Hinata to associate with that boy. Hinata was spending a rare hour with Hanabi in the garden their mother had loved. Hyuga Haruki had secretly been a non-traditionalist. As the wife of the Hyuga clan head, and as the Lady Hyuga, she had publicly conformed to the rules and standards set for her. But in her private garden, she could let her desires run wild. Haruki had secretly detested the perfectly manicured lawns, perfectly trimmed shrubs, and perfectly pruned flowers that were the norm in every other perfectly ordered Hyuga garden. It seemed that even the plants on the estate were forced to conform to perfect Hyuga standards. However, in her own private garden, she had allowed nature to take its course. The plants and flowers were free to grow as they would. There were over 100 different varieties of wildflowers that blended together in a rainbow of colors. None of which were forced to grow in specific flower beds or patterns. The only order in the wild garden was a gravel path that meandered lazily throughout, granting visitors a way to enjoy the natural view from different angles. A moss-covered fountain in the center provided the soothing sound of running water. A single stone bench beside the fountain offered a spot for rest and contemplation. This had been her escape, however temporary, from the rigid structure of her life. For both Hinata and Hanabi, their mother's garden served the same purpose. Away from prying eyes, they could simply be sisters, and Hanabi could simply be a child, not the fearless Hyuga warrior the clan was trying to mold. Hinata sat on the stone bench and watched the little girl run about the garden gathering flowers to make flower crowns and necklaces for each other. Hinata smiled. She never took her relationship with her sister for granted. It was too precious, and 2 years ago, it had almost been destroyed. Flashback. Hinata was dead tired. It had been one of those days where life seemed to hate her more than usual. The day had been one disaster after another. First, she had overslept and arrived almost an hour late to morning training with Gai-sensei and the boys. As a result, she missed her chance to spar with Naruto because Gai-sensei had her run extra laps in order to rekindle the flames of youth. When she arrived in class, she discovered to her consternation that not only had she forgotten her homework assignment, she had also forgotten to bring her lunch. Luckily, Iruka-sensei had been understanding and would allow her to turn her assignment in the next day. And Naruto was more than happy to offer her one of his cups of instant ramen. He always seemed to carry a few extra with him. After lunch, she'd accidentally run into Neji in the hallway. He had been so angry that she half expected him to hurt her then and there, though he'd probably try to take it out on her the next time they sparred. She shuddered just thinking about it. To make matters worse, Naruto had earned detention after class with Iruka-sensei for pulling a prank on Kenta and Jiro. They had been making fun of Naruto's inability to perform henge, the transformation jutsu. Hinata was disappointed because she had wanted to hang out with Naruto after class. He could always cheer her up with just a few words, and she really could have used a full dose of Naruto today. Thus, Hinata returned to the Hyuga estate early, hoping to spend some time with Hanabi. But Hanabi's politics instructor, Hyuga Shin, had coolly informed her that Hanabi was still training, as a daughter of the main house should, and did not need any distractions, especially not from her elder sister. Hinata knew that she had just been insulted. By his tone of voice, Hyuga Shin had clearly implied that Hinata did not work hard and should not be allowed to see Hanabi, lest her weakness and incompetence was contagious. The implication stung. Hinata was being pressured to abandon Hanabi. It was not the first time, nor would it be the last. At one time, Hinata might have believed that Hanabi would be better off without her weaker, older sister holding her back. But that had been before Naruto. Naruto's unconditional encouragement and support, even when she felt she didn't deserve it, made Hinata happy. It never made her weaker. Hinata loved Hanabi. Hinata wanted Hanabi to be happy. So Hinata silently promised herself that she would be there for Hanabi, the way Naruto was there for her. Hanabi would always know that her Onisan cared for her, and supported her. Whether or not Hanabi succeeded or failed, Hinata would still love her, and still believe in her. The Hyuga elders could pressure her as much as they wanted. Hinata stubbornly refused to abandon her sister. But when subtle pressure failed to get the result they wanted, the elders tried a different tact. Hinata saw Hanabi every night before bed without fail. The sisters were usually kept so busy that sometimes the few minutes before bed were the only time they had together. Hanabi received private instruction and hours of Juken training each day, while Hinata had her own training and classes at the academy to attend. Even if all they could do was exchange a hug or a few words, for Hinata, it was the best way to end the day. Hinata was dead tired after one of those days. She just wanted to see her sister, then crawl into bed and pray for the next day to be better. Her day certainly couldn't get any worse. It seemed as if fate was laughing at her because as soon as that thought crossed her mind, it got worse, much worse. I hate you. Hinata jerked back as if she had been physically slapped. Hanabi-chan. Hinata gasped. She stood in the doorway of Hanabi's bedroom in shock. Her sister's normally immaculate room was in shambles. The sheets had been torn off the bed. Every book and scroll she owned had been knocked off the shelves. The painting of a lotus blossom that hung over Hanabi's bed was askew. The collection of small ceramic cats that Hanabi had started collecting was shattered in sharp jagged pieces in a pile by the wall. Most telling of all, the photograph of Hinata and Hanabi taken on Hanabi's last birthday, that usually graced her desk was torn to shreds, and the glass frame cracked. It was as if a hurricane had come through her room, leaving nothing intact, or Hanabi had thrown a massive tantrum and destroyed her room in a fit of rage. Hanabi's face was streaked with tears. Hanabi-chan, what's wrong? What happened? Hinata rushed forward in an attempt to comfort her distraught sister, only to receive a punch in the gut. There had been no chakra in the attack, but it still hurt enough to make Hinata gasp for breath. What was going on? I hate you. Hanabi was still crying. You liar. Hanabi-chan, I have never ever lied to you. Why would you say such a thing? Don't call me that. You liar. You don't love me at all. Hanabi tried to hit her again. But this time, Hinata caught her fist and pulled the smaller girl into her embrace. She ignored Hanabi's struggle to get free. That's not true, Hanabi-chan. You are my precious Imouto. I love you more than my life. I swear it. Hinata gently stroked Hanabi's hair and rubbed her back. Really? Hanabi sniffled. She started to relax under her sister's calming touch. It was hard to disbelieve her Onisan, especially when Hinata was so concerned and caring, even after Hanabi hit her. And she sounded so sincere. Really? Hinata said firmly. She looked her sister in the eyes. Hanabi-chan is very precious to me. Oh, Hanabi said in a small voice that trembled. But, Shin-sensei, He said that Onisan can't wait to be named clan head. That Onisan can't wait to put the cage bird seal on Hanabi-chan. And, that Onisan wants to send Hanabi-chan away to the branch house. And then, Shin-sensei, Hinata frowned. She could feel Hanabi shaking in her arms, nearly overflowing with fear. She placed a comforting kiss on Hanabi's unmarked forehead. What did he do, Hanabi-chan? He hurt Miu from the branch house because she didn't bring him his favorite chocolate candy from Snow Country when she brought us our tea. She screamed and screamed. And then, Shin-sensei said that when Onisan becomes clan head, Onisan will make Hanabi-chan scream and scream if Hanabi-chan makes Onisan mad. Of course, Hanabi had always known of the cage bird seal. She was a Hyuga of the main house and the second-born child of the clan head. She had known of the caged bird seal almost before she could walk and talk. But the caged bird seal had always been an abstract, technical thing that did not impact Hanabi personally. If Hanabi ever thought of the seal at all, it was in the same way that she thought of marriage or death. Eventually, she knew she would get married. Eventually, many years from now, she knew she would die. And, eventually, when her Onisan became the clan leader, she would receive the caged bird seal. It had never been personal. It had never frightened her. The thought of her loving sister actually using it on her had never crossed her mind. But now, I'm so scared, Onisan, Hanabi whispered. The 4-year-old crawled into her sister's lap and buried her face in her sister's shoulder. Hinata had a kind soul. Despite her harsh treatment at the hands of her family, she did not hate her clansmen. Instead, she did her best to fix her flaws and improve herself for their benefit. But this was unforgivable. The elders had failed to get Hinata to leave her sister. Now they were trying to break the bonds between Hanabi and Hinata, and trying to frighten Hanabi into leaving Hinata. For the first time in her life, Hinata knew true hatred. She hated the division within her clan. She hated the caged bird seal. And she hated Hyuga Shin for using the caged bird seal so frivolously, in order to scare Hanabi away from her. She had seen her father use caged bird seal used 3 times before. Even though it made her sick, each time he used it, it had been for a major transgression that would have brought danger to the clan, never for something as simple as forgetting to bring candy along with the tea. Hinata took several deep breaths and pushed her anger and disgust aside. Listen to me, Hanabi-chan. I love you. I promise on my life that I will never hurt you or send you away. Nothing could ever make me mad enough to hurt you. Hanabi gave her sister a long searching look and seemed reassured by the love she could see in Hinata's eyes. Her fear slowly faded away. I trust you, Onisan. Hinata nearly sagged with relief. Hanabi gave her sister an apologetic kiss on the cheek. I love you, too. I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I hit you. Already forgiven and forgotten, Hanabi-chan, Hinata said with a small smile. A few minutes later, Hanabi looked at the destruction around her and sniffled, once again on the verge of tears. I broke my cats and tore my favorite picture of us. Don't cry, Hanabi-chan. I can buy some new cats for you. And I still have a copy of that picture. Or we can take a new picture of us tomorrow. Would you like that? Hanabi nodded and let Hinata dry her tears. Come on, I'll help you clean up. The next week, the entire stock of dark chocolate candies imported from the land of snow, the same ones favored by the elder, Hyuga Shin, vanished from the Hyuga estate. It would take at least another 2 months before more of the candy would arrive. Trade between the land of fire and the land of snow was often slow due to distance and bandits. Coincidentally, that same week, a bolt of lovely, purple, patterned silk arrived anonymously for Hyuga Miu of the branch family. Miu had sighed longingly over that bolt at the market several days prior, but could not justify the purchase of such expensive fabric on a whim. Flashback. Normally, Hinata did not condone revenge. Naruto must have rubbed off on her more than she realized. It was such a small, petty thing, too. But afterwards, Hinata felt much better. Despite further attempts to separate them, her relationship with Hanabi was stronger than ever. Hanabi trusted Hinata, and she would never betray that trust. Is Onisan daydreaming about her boyfriend again? Hanabi teased, bringing Hinata's mind back to the present. She dropped a pile of brightly colored blossoms in Hinata's lap. Hanabi-chan. Hinata blushed. I've told you again and again. Naruto-kun is not my boyfriend. We're just friends. I know he's not, Hanabi laughed. But you want him to be, don't you? I can tell. You always get this dreamy look on your face whenever you talk about him. I do not, Hinata protested, and blushed even harder. Do too. Hinata and Naruto, sitting in a tree, kissing. In retaliation, Hinata threw a flower at Hanabi's head. But this only made her sister laugh harder. Hinata had to grin. Even though Hanabi was annoying when she teased her about Naruto-kun, Hinata was glad to see her smiling and laughing like a 6-year-old. Unfortunately, the moment was broken by the arrival of a messenger at the entrance of their garden. I am sorry to intrude, Hinata-sama, Hanabi-sama. The messenger bowed low. Hiyashi-sama requests Hinata-sama's presence in his office immediately. The moment was broken by the arrival of a messenger at the entrance of their garden. I am sorry to intrude, Hinata-sama, Hanabi-sama. The messenger bowed low. Hiyashi-sama requests Hinata-sama's presence in his office immediately. Hanabi shot her sister a worried glance. Their father had not summoned Hinata to see him in years. She might be the youngest in the family, but she wasn't stupid. Every other time he requested Hinata's presence in his office had been to criticize her for failing to live up to his expectations. Hanabi had never been on the receiving end of one of her father's chastisements, but she had eavesdropped on them occasionally and had even been present once or twice. It was always unpleasant to say the least. This couldn't be anything good. Hinata had been doing so well lately. She had improved her juken. She had won several spars in a row against her peers. Why did their father want to see Hinata now? Thank you. I will be there in a moment, Hinata said firmly. The messenger bowed and left having completed his duty. Hinata gave Hanabi a reassuring smile. Don't worry Hanabi-chan. Everything will be okay. Now if only she could believe her own words. Do you know why you are here? Hiyashi regarded his daughter carefully. She stood with her back straight and with hands clasped in front of her. Though he could find no trace of nervousness in her posture, she would not meet his eyes. No, father. You have been training under Maida Guy. Yes, father. Hinata did not react outwardly to her father's observation, but the sudden dread in her heart made it hard to speak. He is a respected taijutsu specialist, one of the best in Konoha. It is no wonder that you were able to improve under his tutelage. You have finally achieved a passable level of skill in juken. Thank you, father. Guy-sensei is an excellent instructor. Training is his passion. You have also done well in your academic studies, both at the academy and under your private instructors. However, you still have much to learn, especially in the niceties of proper behavior befitting a person of your status. For instance, it is not proper for the Hyuga heiress to be friends with a penniless orphan. The blood drained from her face, and she could feel her heartbeat quicken. He knew. Her father knew about Naruto. I suppose it is not entirely your fault, Hiyashi allowed. We have neglected your social training in favor of furthering your academic studies and improving your juken. That was a mistake. If you had had more training in the comportment expected of an heiress, then perhaps you might have avoided making such an improper friend. The Uzumaki child is nobody. For you to be friends with him implies that he has the nominal approval of our clan. We are one of the most respected clans in the Land of Fire. We have a reputation to uphold, a reputation that does not include associating with the riffraff. Your behavior reflects poorly upon the clan. From now on, you will no longer associate with the Uzumaki child. Despite her recent displays of strength, Hiyashi expected immediate compliance to his orders, not defiance. He almost blinked in shock when he heard the softly spoken word. No. Hiyashi raised an eyebrow. Hinata was clearly afraid. Her stutter was back and her face was as white as a sheet. But she didn't back down. Interesting. When backed into a corner, the kitten revealed its hidden claws again. He wondered how far she would go to protect her friendship with the boy. Oh, perhaps I did not make myself clear enough. I will explain in simpler terms. It is unwise of you to befriend an orphan with no future prospects. I forbid you from seeing Uzumaki Naruto outside of your normal classes at the academy. No, Hinata had a moment of panic. Her greatest fear was coming to pass. She couldn't let her father take Naruto-kun from her. What was she going to do? She had been expecting something like this for years. She was only surprised it had not come sooner. 4 years ago, something like this would have crushed her. But 4 years as Naruto's best friend had rubbed off on her, just a little bit. It was enough. She was prepared to defend the most precious thing she had, her friendship with Naruto, no matter what it took. Hinata was deathly afraid of her father. But she was more afraid of losing Naruto. No, I will not. Naruto-kun has future prospects. He has more potential than anyone else I know. It is unwise of the Hyuga not to make ties with the future Hokage of this village. She said fiercely, unless you intend to lock me in my room and keep me there by force, I will be friends with Uzumaki Naruto. In that moment with her eyes blazing, Hiyashi was jolted by just how strong his frail daughter appeared. Once Hinata started she couldn't seem to stop, and words spilled from her heart to her mouth, completely bypassing her head. Naruto-kun is a strong ninja. Because of him I can become a strong ninja, too. It was his idea for us to train with Guy-sensei in the first place. It is his encouragement that makes me stronger, not because he can teach me new techniques or skills, but because he believes in me. Whenever I make a mistake, or fail, he's there to pick me up and tell me I did great. Even when I fail, he tells me that the next time I will definitely get it right. Unlike this family, Naruto-kun believes in me. Unlike this family, Naruto-kun never gave up on me, not once. And he won't let me give up on myself, either. Because of him, I can like myself more. Because of him, I've stopped hating myself for being so weak. Naruto-kun is my best friend. You will not take him away from me. Hinata's hands flew to her mouth in horror. She had not meant to say all those things. She was practically shouting at her father. She took several shaky breaths in attempt to calm herself. For her rebellion and blatant disrespect towards her father, her punishment would be terrible. For such disobedience towards the clan head, he could banish her to the branch house. She was already in a world of trouble. She might as well go all the way. Hinata looked her father squarely in the eyes and spoke with absolute conviction. One day, Naruto-kun will be the Hokage, and I will be there by his side. I see. Hiyashi stared impassively at his daughter. Is that your final word on this matter? It is. Hinata tried unsuccessfully to keep her hands from trembling under the pressure. You understand that you are defying a direct order from your clan head. Are you prepared to accept the punishment, including the possibility of receiving the caged bird seal? I am. The silence that followed was deafening. Hiyashi thought he should feel angry about Hinata's rebellion. He should have been furious. But strangely, he was not. All he felt was pride. For the first time in years, for the first time since Hinata's first steps as a baby, he was actually proud of his daughter. Suddenly, he could almost see the ghost of his friend standing behind his daughter with his hand on her shoulder, and he could hear a familiar voice whisper in his ear. Do you know what makes a good leader, Hiyashi? Flashback. Do you know what makes a good leader, Hiyashi? Strength, of course, he replied automatically. A leader must be strong. Strength is a part of it, true, but it takes more than just strength to be a good leader. His friend looked out over the village and waved his hand carelessly. There are a lot of strong ninja out there, but most of them would make terrible leaders. Only a handful of people ever become great leaders. Do you know why? Share with me your words of wisdom, O mighty Hokage-sama. Someday, Hiashi, I'm going to get you, stop calling me that. His blonde friend laughed. Then he said seriously, every great leader must embody 6 very important qualities. The first quality is, as you have said, strength. The second is unwavering courage. The third is belief in themselves and in the people around them. The fourth is the willingness to take responsibility for your decisions, no matter what the consequences may be. The fifth is empathy for an understanding of the people you led. If you don't feel for them or try to understand them, how will you know what your people need? The sixth, and final, quality of a great leader is vision. A leader must have a clear vision of the future. Every decision they make takes them closer towards that future. I want Konoha to be a place where people can be safe and prosper. I want the children of the village to grow up safe and happy. Flashback. For some reason, he had never forgotten that conversation. Namikaze Minato had been an amazing friend, and an even more amazing Hokage. He had possessed all 6 traits of leadership in spades. Before today, Hiashi had not believed Hinata could ever become a capable leader, let alone the kind of leader the Hyuga clan needed. But here she was, displaying every trait. Strength. In the last few months, she had manifested amazing new strength, defeating her peers through hard work. In a few more years, she had the potential to be truly formidable. Courage. She had faced down the entire council of elders, despite her obvious fear. And right now, she was almost daring him to stop her from being friends with Uzumaki Naruto. Where had the timid little mouse gone? Belief. Her greatest weakness had been her lack of faith in herself. She had quit too easily, too often. But now, she had said it herself, she stopped giving up. He could see the confidence shining within her. Responsibility. No matter the consequences. She wasn't backing down. She was fighting for the right to remain friends with the boy, despite the very real possibility of losing her status as the heiress and receiving the cage bird seal. Empathy and understanding. These were qualities that Hinata had always possessed. She had always been too kind. Hiashi was not blind. Most members of the Hyuga branch house liked his daughter for her compassion and gentle nature. And finally, vision. Hinata saw a future Hokage allied with the Hyuga, and was taking steps to make that future a reality. That boy, a future Hokage, only time would tell. But for now, the ghost of his friend standing behind his daughter slowly morphed into an image of a golden-haired child with equally intense blue eyes before fading away completely. If the boy was behind his daughter's transformation, then he must also possess some of those same qualities. He was truly the Yondaime's legacy. The Yondaime's legacy. Hiashi paused and sat up a little straighter, as a suspicion took root in the back of his mind. The Sandaime occasionally referred to the child as the Yondaime's legacy, even though Minato's wife and unborn child had died during the Kyuubi attack so many years ago. Could it be? Hiashi mentally shook himself. He could think about that another day. He made his decision. Very well. Hinata tensed, anticipating an explosion of rage, or worse, banishment to the branch house. She had just promised to disobey her clan head. She was going to be punished, of course. It was only a question of how severe her punishment would be. But to stay with Naruto, she would gladly endure any punishment. Hinata searched her father's face and body language for signs of anger. Sadly, she was very familiar with all the signs. Only, instead of a harsh scowl and cold unforgiving eyes, her father was smiling. Hinata's mouth dropped open in shock, and she wanted to pinch herself. Her father was smiling, a rare enough occurrence, although it did happen occasionally. What stunned her was the fact that was he smiling at her? He never smiled at her. Was he actually pleased with her? A leader must learn when to make his own decisions and when to listen to the advice of his subordinates, even when it contradicts his own ideas. I am not well acquainted with Uzumaki Naruto. I only know of him through the second-hand observations of others. I do not know him personally, as you obviously do. Hinata held her breath. Her father was not reacting like she expected. It was disconcerting, and in some ways more frightening than the full force of his anger. Your argument for your continued association with him was impressive. Thank you. Hinata was even more bewildered. Impress her father? Impossible. I suppose the long-term benefits of a Hokage allied to our clan outweighs a minor mark on our reputation. Hiyashi gave her a sharp measuring look. It will be interesting to see if you are right about him. I will be watching Uzumaki Naruto's career very closely. Sarutobi took a calming puff on his pipe. Smoking was a terrible vice. According to his old student, Tsunade, it was terribly unhealthy, too. Still, he was an old man. After all he'd seen and lived through, well, he deserved to have a few vices. He carefully considered the Jonin's request. It was a bit unusual to request a single apprentice rather than a team of 3 genin, but it was not unheard of. Sometimes Jonin preferred taking a single student over splitting their attention between 3 students, though it was not a common practice. Are you sure this is what you want? It is, Hokage-sama. A pity. I think you would have made a fine instructor for a team of genin. Are you certain you don't want to take on a full team, and give your apprentice 2 teammates? Lee could learn a lot from working with his peers, and eventually, in order to pass the Chunin exams, he will need a team. I have already spoken to Lee. He agrees with me, Hokage-sama. This is what we both want. I do not make this request lightly. The Jonin met his gaze steadily. The Hokage sighed. There was no reason not to grant the Jonin's request other than more paperwork. He carefully stamped the document with his seal, then blew on it lightly to dry the ink. Very well. Your request has been approved. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto gasped for breath as he finished the newest kata in his repertoire. Gai-sensei had taught it to him and Lee last week. Lee had already mastered it and was off running laps again. Naruto would have finished earlier and joined him, except that he had just increased his weights a few days ago. Each and every kata he knew suddenly became doubly difficult to execute. He used a towel to wipe away the sweat on his face and sighed a little in frustration. The difficulty would only last until he got used to the additional weight. The muscles in his arms and legs burned from overexertion. He couldn't wait until his limbs felt normal again. He grabbed a bottle of water from his pack and took a long refreshing drink. Movement at the edge of the training ground caught his eye, and he almost choked on his water. It was Hinata. Naruto grinned at the pleasant surprise. Hinata rarely left the Hyuga estate on the weekends. Her family kept her too busy with all their private instruction. But he was always happy to see his best friend. He jogged over to greet her. Hinata-chan, what are you doing here? I thought you'd be too busy to train with me today. Naruto-kun. Hinata jolted in surprise. Lost in her thoughts, she didn't remember leaving the Hyuga estate or automatically walking towards their training ground. She didn't even see Naruto until he announced his presence. Hinata-chan. Naruto frowned. His friend looked pale and dazed, like she had just woken from a dream. His eyes widened in alarm. You're shaking. Hinata looked down slowly. Sure enough, her hands were shaking. She had been nervous, worried, terrified, panicked, determined, angry, shocked, and relieved, all within the space of an hour. But a Hyuga was always dignified and self-contained. Excessive displays of emotion were frowned upon. So she had internalized and suppressed as many of those feelings as she could. It was too much. It needed an outlet. She looked at Naruto, who was worriedly checking her over for injuries. His obvious concern for her well-being touched her. Hinata sniffled. It made her so happy. That last emotion combined with all the others finally broke her self-control. Hinata started laughing and crying at the same time. Hinata-chan, what's wrong? Naruto was worried before, but now he was absolutely frantic. He couldn't find anything physically wrong with her. She had simply grabbed onto him as if he were a lifeline. She wouldn't stop crying, and she wouldn't talk to him, either. In the end, he simply held her and let her cry all over his shirt. He did his best to comfort her by awkwardly patting her back. Whatever it is, just stop crying, okay? I'll help you. That only made her cry harder. Naruto snapped his mouth shut and decided not to say anything else, in case he just made things worse. After several minutes, Hinata finally stopped crying and loosened her death grip on Naruto, though she didn't pull away completely. Hinata hiccuped a little. She was embarrassed for falling apart in front of Naruto, but he didn't seem to mind. And she felt much better. They sat quietly for a few more minutes. My father ordered me to stop associating with you. Naruto felt his heart stop. I said, no. Then I announced my intention to disobey a direct order from my father. Hinata said with more than a touch of disbelief. I thought for sure that he would put the caged bird seal on me for that. Naruto stopped breathing. His hand immediately flew to her head and brushed aside her bangs. Her forehead was unmarked. He released a shaky breath. If she had received the caged bird seal because of him, he would never forgive himself. What happened? He whispered. Nothing. Hinata shook her head in amazement. Nothing at all. Father was impressed that I stood up to him. I don't believe it. I impressed my father. That's impossible. I must be dreaming. Am I dreaming, Naruto-kun? I doubt it, Hinata-chan. Naruto smiled. You're a pretty impressive girl. It's about time your father realized it, too. I knew you'd show him eventually. Hinata blushed lightly. He always knew just what to say to make her feel better. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She leaned into his embrace and closed her eyes. Thank you. Huh, why? I didn't do anything. It was all you. Hinata didn't say anything. She simply shook her head. You're wrong, Naruto-kun. You did everything. Because of you, I was able to change. I know, I like myself more now. For you, I found the strength to stand up to my father. Thank you, for everything. I'm okay now, Naruto-kun. Let's go train. The next day at the academy, Naruto approached Hinata's desk during the short break between outdoor weapons practice at the target range and more history lessons, mostly about famous shinobi battles, in the classroom. He had been watching her closely all day, looking for any sign of distress or discomfort. Yesterday, Hinata had assured him that she was all right, and that her father would not punish her for choosing to remain his friend. But he had his doubts. What if her father changed his mind? Naruto was selfishly glad that Hinata was still his friend. But he didn't want to risk her well-being. The first thing he checked that morning had been her forehead. It was still unmarked. Thank goodness. Still, her clan might find other ways to punish her for associating with the demon brat. To his great relief, Hinata appeared fine, if a little bit distracted. What is it, Naruto-kun? Hinata blushed when he put his hand on her clean forehead. Only time would ease his fears. Nothing. I'm just making sure you're okay. Naruto said seriously. I want you to promise me something, Hinata-chan. I know that if you make a promise, you'll keep it, because we never go back on our words. What is it? Promise me that you'll always tell me if you're not okay. I want to be there to help you when you're sad or unwell. Only if you promise me the same, Naruto-kun. It's a deal then. Naruto grinned. He leaned in and peered closely at her face, making Hinata feel a bit lightheaded. He's too close. Are you sure you're okay? Yes, she squeaked. Just checking. Naruto smiled. He straightened up, and returned to his desk. At least, that had been the plan. Except, plans don't always work out. Jiro, who sat in the row in front of Hinata, suddenly remembered that he'd left his weapons bag at the target range. He glanced at the clock. If he hurried, he could run out and retrieve it before Iruka-sensei returned and took attendance. He jumped to his feet, completely unaware that Naruto was standing directly behind him, and slammed into Naruto's back. With that sudden jolt, Naruto pitched forward and fell right into Hinata. Luckily, his reflexes caught his forward momentum enough that he was able to keep most of his weight from landing and injuring Hinata. But his face collided with hers. And their lips were touching. Wide blue eyes gazed into equally wide lavender eyes. For a split second, They were too shocked to move. And then, Naruto jerked back as if he had been burned. Oh, my god, I'm so sorry, Hinata-chan. Are you okay? Hinata's entire body was tingling. His lips were so warm and soft. She and Naruto-kun, we just kissed. Hinata fainted,